So, when you hear the word pressure, what is your initial reaction?
Well, I have a negative feeling when every time I hear pressure, something that we want to avoid. Uh, in our work, we when every time we have pressure, we think it's we we feel very bad about it. Yeah, and so basically, that word is has a negative connotation for me.
Do you think in some ways it can be a positive thing, or is it always just negative?
There's a saying, a famous saying. I think you have heard it also. Turn pressure into motivation. In Chinese, it's 化压力为动力. So this phrase alone would tell us that turn pressure, meaning that's something negative thing, to into positive motivation. So meaning pressure and motivation are two different things. They could even be uh, mutually exclusive. So when they say turn pressure into motivation, meaning we want to avoid pressure and we want motivation. So why not like in our job, the school? Why take the roundabout route? For example, we avoid pressure. We remove it in this from the life of the learners. For example, instead we go directly to motivation. Is it possible?
How do we do that?
We have to be uh, realistic. There are many things in our job, basically, of course, in the school, that actually are not pressure. For example, I never heard parents complain about recitation. They never say, please minimize recitation, please minimize seat work. They would always point to test. You got lots of tests, especially in our school, no? And that's something that they can see, test. And there's another thing that they can see every day is the content of the coverage of the test. But seldom I would hear parents complain about the coverage. And they think coverage is not something that they feel uh, that there's pressure in the coverage. They accept it, but the test, the frequency of the test, they equate it to some kind of a pressure. So recitation, seat work, of course, they can see it. So they don't usually, and it's funny thing that in our school, it's usually the parents are complaining of pressure, talking about the word pressure, but the children seldom would mention that word. Well, probably the children are not that articulate, but it's usually the parents, and they would always point to the test. No other thing like content. Or like I mentioned, content. Usually they don't have any complaint about the coverage. It's so strange because pressure should come from the coverage, not from the form. It should be the content, the subject matter. But they're referring to the test, not the content.
I have two things to say. The first one is about tests as a form, and the second one is about learners not not hearing this from learners and hearing it from parents. Uh, I'll ask the first one first. What do you think about the form of tests that make it seem like there's more pressure attached to it?
Yeah, actually, motivation can turn into pressure. Now, a while ago, we hear this. We mentioned about I mentioned about the saying that turn pressure into motivation. Other way around, motivation into pressure. That can be. motivation, if not done properly, could turn into pressure. Like, for example, tests. We'll take tests as an example. There are two kinds of tests I will mention. One is a scheduled test with coverage. Scheduled tests, announced tests, there's a schedule and there's coverage. The other one is unannounced test. There's two kinds of tests here. So which do you think is more scary? More scary? It's the announced test or the unannounced test?
Go for the scarier one, the unannounced one, right?
Do you think it's less pressure? You will experience less pressure. Children will think it's
It depends. I think if it's unannounced, I will feel less pressure before it. But then when you finally say, when I get to the classroom and then they announce it, okay, we're having a quiz, without having prepared for it, then I'll have more pressure in that moment. It's more of a spike in pressure, right? Whereas the other one, the one where you announce it, it's a longer. It's more it lingers, for like the rest for the night before the test. So it's different. It's a different kind of pressure, or yeah.
yeah, probably you're right. But the effect is if it is unannounced test, there's no coverage. You have to be prepared
Mm.
for practically everything. The lesson that they have taken up in the past few days or past few weeks. So that's more scary, I think.
Yeah. Actually, I did say unannounced
Yeah,
is scarier.
the 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 announced scheduled test to give the children enough time to prepare, to prepare, and because there's a coverage, and it's not pressure that you mentioned a while ago. It lingers. It's not pressure. Probably it's some kind of a um, worry. But if the child is ready for the test, I don't think the degree of stress, probably stress with quotation mark, would be lessened because they're given the time. Plus, the coverage is reasonable. They can manage, and there's a certain subject matter that will be included in the test, and it's I think it would be more on the motivation side rather than the pressure. You know, although it's the on the other case, it's an announced test. But the children would always they behind their consciousness, they would always think that oh, later there might be a test. Even that it's unannounced, I think any responsible parents will still let their children prepare for something. But it is the coverage is so broad that because it's announced and unannounced and there's no coverage, and the level of anxiety of stress would be much higher, would border to pressure.
Mm.
Yeah, these two kinds of tests I would prefer, an scheduled test and with coverage rather than unannounced test, because anytime the children will feel that anytime their teacher in ISA facilitator would just give tests. Well, by the way, in our school we don't allow unannounced tests. You know that,
Right.
no? All the tests
Yeah, I know.
are scheduled precisely because we think that if it is unannounced, there's no coverage, it's open and then anytime practically children have to prepare for, they don't know even what to prepare because it's so broad. It's like long test every day. They have to prepare for a long test every day. That's what we want to avoid because that would create pressure on the part of the children and parents. That's what they think. So this is one example.
Mm.
Because a test itself is neutral. It's neither a motivating force nor a pressure, a factor that would cause pressure. It is just how we handle it. Like, for example, subject matter, the lesson coverage. If the lesson coverage is too broad, then of course it might create pressure. It might turn motivation. Actually, it's a motivation. The purpose is the effect is that children will be motivated to review because there's a quiz. But if it is the coverage is too broad and lots of subjects to prepare, then that would turn into pressure. And this is what we don't want to happen.
What if I do understand that tests, when done, I think when done the right way, when scheduled appropriately, when the coverage is reasonable, and when you prepare enough for it, it shouldn't be something too scary, right? Because
Yeah.
if the materials are given and the difficulty is appropriate for your level, it shouldn't be something too scary. But I think the trouble comes with learners as a student now, and having been, having gone through the ESA system and having gone through I've been through many different schools and different colleges. I think it's not the test itself sometimes, but the quantity of the tests.
Yes.
Like
yes. True.
if it's so many, right? If it's so many tests may piled up into a really short period of time, that's when it can become pressure. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there are three major things that motivation may turn into pressure. A while ago, I mentioned about tests, no? The way how we handle tests. There are many ways, no? Like unannounced tests, scheduled tests, reading, pre-discussion tests, as you are familiar with that. Starting from grade 5, you have pre-discussion tests. Um, Aside from tests, there's still another factor like content. I mentioned that a while ago. If let's say a year, the content is good for 1 year, and the school makes it compress it that all the content should be done in 5 months, then that would unduly create pressure on the part of the children. Granting that the curriculum set by the Department of Education is appropriate, scientific, child age appropriate, no, for the children, for good for 1 year. That's designed by the Department of Education. And we try to compress them into 5 months. Then I think that would create pressure, not only to those who are struggling, but even to those who are excelling. They will feel pressure because the study, granting that there is a study made, and I'm sure there's a study made why why is it designed that way for 1 year. But the school just want to expedite everything, and that 1 year curriculum is compressed into 5 months. They finish in 5 months for whatever reason, but that will create pressure. And third, kids who have lots of learning gap, whatever motivation, whatever means the facilitator will do in the classroom, will never we can never eradicate pressure on the part of these children. Those who have learning gaps will experience pressure.
Mm.
So these three factors, test and not done properly, not designed properly, contents which go the way we handle the contents, the subject matters, goes against the intention of the designer of the curriculum. And third is children who have learning gaps. These are the major three factors that would turn motivation into pressure. In other words, motivation will not be that effective, and pressure will come in.
You mentioned earlier that parents usually complain more about tests and not so much about recitation, not so much about the coverage. Is that because seat work, for example, they don't really complain about homework, not so much? Is that because tests are inherently graded? Is that something that maybe because it's graded, it's something that you record and it's, you grade it and then you record the grades? What do you think about, is that it? Or if it is about the grades, how do we approach grades, like grading, for example?
Yeah. One thing I mentioned a while ago that why is it that they focus on text? Because they can see it, they can feel it. The other thing they can see is the content, but they don't have questioning about content because in our school, we are very careful with the coverage, the quiz we have every day. So they don't have complaint on that. On something that they cannot see, recitation, seat work, even they're graded, they don't see it. They they talk they focus on tests because that's something that every day they have to face together with their children. No? Parang it's something that they cannot um, they have a very wrong probably a not a proper concept about test. We know in we know in ISA, we know that the test, the result of the test, of course, it's graded. No, why is it to be graded? Because we want that the children should review for the test, so that the result of the test is more valid, credible. Uh, okay, that's and from the point of the point of view of the children, the result of the test is some kind of a recognition. If they get high score, if they got low score, some kind of a reminder that they have to do something. For parents, on the other hand, from the parents, it's some kind of a reward when they see the result, the high score that the children got. Is some kind of reward of the effort, both from the parents and the children. For the facilitators, this is more important. Actually, the test is very important to the mentors because through the test, that's the only way the mentors can have feedbacks, can know what has been absorbed in the past few days or a week of lessons um, that the children have already learned or what they haven't learned yet. So from the test, it is a good tool for them to plan for their next step in the learning process of their subject. So actually talking about test, if they just have a correct concept of the test, I think parents would see it from a more positive way rather than thinking it's a pressure, because test actually is not a pressure. Test should be a friend of good education. I think this word is not, it's not from me. I borrowed this from William Bennett, a secretary of Department of Education of the United States under the Reagan administration. So strange, no? The Secretary of Education of the United States said this: "Test is a friend of good education." I quoted it from the book, from his book, the Educated Child is there. So he cited many examples, no, why is it a good, it's a friend of good education. First, of course, I mentioned all it's a feedback and it's a recognition of the effort of the children. And also, um, it is a habit forming that eventually it will lead to some kind of a acquiring of some kind of virtues like hard work, diligence, sense of responsibility, discipline. These four, I mean, no, are the recipe for success. No? Um, so through this, actually, task is a tool. It's a tool for William Bennett is a friend of good education. For us, we see it as a tool to lead to something, not only for that subject matter itself, but to to build a strong person. Um, to quote another educator, Toralba, Dr. Toralba, we are developing a learners with backbone, not jellyfish. That's also in the book of his Toralba. Um, so all these, uh, especially with William Bennett, because we could not expect that in the Western. We have a concept that in Western phil- education philosophy, they're more lax. No, they are liberal. They don't unlike in Singapore, China, East Asian countries that they are very rigid. But meaning it's not only in East Asia, but also in the United States. There are lots of advocates who think test is who see things as a test as a positive factor in the education and the learning process of the child. So habit forming, because it's especially in ISA, we believe in that. We make it as a daily routine. And, you see, I observed this many times that when the parents were fetching their children, the time they grab the bag, the first thing they want to see is the home link. The home link. No? All the subjects of the the subject the no the coverage of the test of the next day are written in the home link. That's the first thing they see. Uh, um, Whether they see it positively or negatively, um, it doesn't matter now. But they know the first thing they should do upon arriving at home, they have to start reviewing for the next day. And the children, I observe also those children. When you return the quiz notebook to them, they don't just set it aside. Right away, they open it to the page of yesterday's test and see their score. And after that, they would compare. You could see that they would chat with the other kids holding their notebook and comparing their scores and answers. If this is not learning, I don't know what is. From this, you could, yeah, okay.
Go on, go on.
They feel from the behavior. My inference is that these children values their effort, their labor, the result of their. They want to see the result of their effort. They value their hard work the previous day. That's why they are concerned with the result of their work, of their tests. So, um, yeah,
I think
that's
for
it. That's it.
me, my 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 only concern with that is, uh, do we are we turning their motivation into a number? Like, are we when they value the number, on their grade so much, sometimes it can turn into a demotivation, right? If you get a low score, sometimes if you get one low score out of many high scores, that's fine, right? You're like, oh, it's okay. I'll make up for it in the next test. But what if it becomes a demotivating thing where you're just getting low scores again and again and again? Is it becomes a cycle where maybe the learner becomes uh, unmotivated to study at all, right?
Yeah,
How
this
do we,
usually
yeah,
happen to
how do we
those.
respond to that?
Yeah,
How should they turn that? It's easy to say you have to turn this into motivation. That's easy to say, but when you're there in the moment, it's not so easy, right?
yeah, yeah. This usually happen to those kids who have lots of learning gaps. Yeah, I mentioned that a while ago because for these children, motivation sometimes is so difficult to sink in their system. Even how much you explain. So In ISA, we have this policy that after 3 consecutive failure, because we return the quiz notebook every day for the parents to know the progress of the learning. But aside from that, when there's a two or three consecutive failure in that subject facilitator will immediately still inform the parents, even knowing already that parents know because we return the quiz notebook every day, but we still remind the parents that you have to do something. And we have this system of intervention, no, on certain topics that the children, that the facilitators would think that the children fails to understand, that the children or the child fails to understand. So there are some mechanism on these, but it we cannot totally avoid now that what you have said, that this test would sound would for these children it would turn into, not even turning into pressure, it becomes pressure. It's not motivation turning into pressure, it's pressure itself. So that's what we want to avoid here in school. In the since grade one, we have some mechanism to try to avoid this. Like for every day, the content. Every day we give test. The content is little, we add it little by little. We add, hoping that these children will absorb maybe 90% of the lessons or even 100% of the subject matter. So, but we cannot avoid that there are children who there are a lot of factors, no? Probably at home they don't have support from the parents as early as 6 years old, grade one. So they fail to have to build a solid foundation on certain subjects. So it accumulates year after year. During summer, probably they fail, and during summer they take remedial classes. But but problem starts from there. Our observation in for the 20 years, 22 years in ESA, and even before in other schools, the observation is that those who have failure in certain subjects develop start to develop learning gaps. Remedial classes during summer would only solve certain percentage of the problem. It's not a, it will not totally eradicate the problem. So every year that accumulates until such time, especially the critical time is the for ISA, it's grade 5, grade 4, grade 5. Children, if they manage to get good grades, no, let's say 85 and above consistently from grade 1 up to grade 4, they will find grade 5 up much easier to tackle. The subject matter in grade 5 up is much easier to tackle. Those who are have failing, not consistent, have failing grades in quizzes, in the long test, are the ones who suffer. And well, one remedy is the because our passing rate is 75. No, out of 100 items, the child has to get 75%. In that it is 60 over 100. No, we stick to 75, so it's high. So some children, if they cannot reach that level, our recommendation is that we recommend them to transfer to other school, which have the passing rate set at 60 over 100. We are not driving them away. We are helping them because if they continue to stay in our school, the learning gap every year will accumulate in such a way that children will find learning pressure. No longer motivation is not a remedy anymore. You cannot tell him that, oh, you have to study. It's gonna, because there are lots of learning gap already, and the learning cannot stop. Because grade 5, we set certain standard. Actually, it's the DepEd, the Department of Education, set certain standard. We just follow it. We finish all the subject matter in the year. In that year, we make sure that nothing is left, is undiscussed, so the children will suffer further. So our recommendation is for them to transfer to other school where the requirements passing cutoff is lesser. But in the in the Congress right now, I don't know if you have updated yourself with the development in our education.
Not
There are
really,
already
but
some,
please, yeah, please
yeah, there are some
enlighten me.
representatives already advocating for 70 over 100 passing rate, which I think is a positive sign. Ours is 75. Actually, this 60 was a relatively recent recent policy that was or that was announced, I think, from 8 years ago. Before that, it's for 50 over 100. So DepEd sees that if we set it so low, and would not strive for a higher. 50 over 100 is so low. And children, once they get 50 over 100, it's 75. Most children would parents would settle for that. So they're happy. Now they pass. So, but there's still some learning gaps there that existing but is not recognized in the grading system. But in ESA, we try to reveal it through our grading system. There's learning gap. We only allow certain amount of learning gap. More than that, we have to show it in the grading system. No, as I said a while ago, it's a sort of a reminder to the children, and it to the parents as well, that they have to do something, and for the facilitators, it's it's a feedback that they have to also do something to help these children close the gap as early as possible.
Do you have any stories, maybe, or experiences where some type of pressure, some type of difficulty turned into a motivating thing? Maybe from your personal life, or maybe from learners in the past that you've handled. What do you have any stories?
Yeah, there are, no? Because, like, for example, those who are um, doing well, doing well in general in the in my subject, for example, sometimes they got low, but it's easy to talk to them. It's easy to when you talk to them. Um, it's sort of a reminder, the same as a reminder that you have to, because you can, in their case, you can easily pinpoint the problem, because learning gap is not the question. There are some, but very minimal learning gap, and you can easily identify them, and talk to them. This is a problem, and for in that part, it's easy for them to remedy. So because it they in general they can cope with the lesson. There's only some subject some aspects of the subject matter probably they cannot understand at first, then easily for them to cope, and it's still easy for them if you just motivate them, and you don't even have to motivate them, you just tell them this is what your problem is, so they would work on that. So there's no pressure on their part. I don't see any pressure, no. So in my part, well, as I said, there are things that we think it's pressure. No, as if we are abusing the term pressure. There are only certain. Uh, there are many things that actually they cannot be considered as pressure. In our job, I try and prepare some lesson, all those things. I don't for my 22 years in ISA and even before in my other school, I cannot exactly say that those not really problems, those part of our challenges in our job, they are not pressure at all. For example, how do we, for example, the Chinese curriculum, we want them to speak. That's the weakest link in our in a Chinese curriculum. And we try to address this problem, think of strategy. Yeah, it's a challenge, but I don't feel it's a pressure. We are working on that now, and we have some progress last year, and we continue with that. And I carefully evaluate all those process, and I just cannot identify it. I cannot equate it as to the word pressure. Like for example, in your case before, in your case, I remember your mom, no, would dictate spelling words, vocabulary, or would test you on the books until grade 5. I remember after class when you're still grade 5, and after grade 5, your mom totally left you alone, never tutor you. Why? Probably she sensed that I feel that she believes that you don't want to settle for lower than most outstanding MO. She trusts you that if you get, for example, probably uh, 10/12, you start to be alarmed. And I also so and of course your quiz notebooks, she would check it and notice that everything is normal. It's normal that everything went well, and then she does not even mention that you have to study. And sometimes she's so busy that she would tell me to sign your quiz notebook. And when I sign it, honestly, I seldom look at the your score. I just take it. Just I never. There's some occasionally I would see 8/12 probably, but I'm not alarmed. I never mentioned that. I just sign it, sign everything, so that you will not get deduction because your facilitators will deduct grades from if those parents won't sign. That's until you graduate, until you finish high school, and even in college, we never ask you what's your grade. And so why is it so? Because we believe, in your case, probably in your case, that you already reached that level that I mentioned a while ago, the discipline, the hard work, the sense of responsibility is already there. That's what we want to develop in the children.
Mm.
Um, and another thing, why everyday tests? This is I would always tell during the parents orientation. I would repeat this many times that the parents, your children, they are not only learning contents. We want them to develop their personality. And in ISA, the core values are diligent, hard work, sense of responsibility, honesty, conscience, discipline. Those are the core values in ISA. And why? Because when these children, your kids, graduate from college and they start to work, once they have the hard work, discipline, all these things, the you don't even have to remind them of what it's already in the system, and chances of success of their in their chosen field is very great. It's very great. So that's what we want. We want children. It's not the content. I would jokingly tell the parents during orientation that why is it that we have this biology, chemistry? It's not that we. Some of them don't will pursue business courses. They don't need this. No? Why is it they need to learn geometry? It's to uh, and the subject Filipino they hate most. So some of them, and it should be there. And we don't lower the standard. We want it to be there because we use these subjects as a tool, as a means to develop their personality. that even a subject that they don't want, they have to face it. Because in the future, when they have their job, they will meet lots of things that probably they don't like, but they have to face it. And life would be much smoother, easier for them because they were already tested during their student life. Education is life itself. I believe in that. No? Uh, Education, it, starting from grade one, it's not preparing them for life. It's life itself. So they learn to accept challenges. They learn to embrace subjects that they don't like. They have to study so that they will reach the requirements of the school and emerge successful in terms of most outstanding directors list.
Okay. What do you think there's more? You mentioned there's the difficulty. You know, facing difficulty is part of the life of in education, and education is life itself. Do you think these difficulties are more difficult now than before? How would you compare life as a learner now versus life as a learner in your time, maybe?
In our time,
Yeah.
I don't see any substantial difference quantitatively. You know, I remember when I was in third year, we had chemistry. Our teacher at that time, her style is just what we are doing in ISA. Um, she gave us certain subject matter that day. There's no advanced reading. There's no quiz before. The what we call that the ad, the
Pre-test?
advanced reading pre-discussion test. There was none. She would discuss the subject matter, and she would say, "I discussed this subject matter. This is her style. In the next meeting, we'll have tests on that." Just the scope is reasonable, and I like that system. I would study because I feel it's within my capability to learn that. The next day, chemistry every day. That's every day. So the next day, we have quiz on that. We have quiz, and I'm more prepared because it's announced, and it is there's a subject matter, there's a scope, and that's the only. She's the only teacher that in my school, my alma mater, that adopts that system. I don't know. See, that's the only teacher. The rest, I don't. They don't give regular quizzes, and if there's no quiz, we don't study. So that's usually the habit, the bad habit that we have those students. No, so to ensure that children would remember the lesson on that day. Usually after 2 days, we give quiz in ISA, or the next day there's a quiz. Well, I remember there's a German psychologist named Ebbinghaus. Ebbinghaus.
Mm.
He discovered certain law of forgetting, the law of forgetting. Based on this law, within 24 hours, anything that you learn and within 24 hours you don't review, you will forget 50 to 80% of what you saw, what is being introduced to you. Of course, it's not learned, lost. So, but within 24 hours, if you manage to review the lessons on that day, in the daytime, you review in the evening, within 24 hours, you would only lose around 25%. And then after 2 days, you review again, you will get back the 24 part of the 25% that you lost. And after a
Mm.
week, you review again, chances are you will remember all the 100%. And after a month, you review again, lifetime. It's a lifetime knowledge already. You will never forget it. This is the findings of that law of forgetting. It's very nice, no? You can check it in the internet. So
Yeah.
somehow we adopt this law. This is a law already, huh? It's not a theory. It's already proven because in that was I think in the 18th, 19th century or 18th century. I forget what year, what century you belong. But in the 1960s, there's another. I don't know. It's in America and Europe. Tested this law. There's a psychologist tested it and proven correct. Correct. The result is duplicated, and the result was somehow similar to what Ebbinghaus. The result is more or less similar. So somehow they call it now law. It's not a theory. It's higher than a theory. It's law. So we apply it here. It's a subject matter for grade 4 down. There's a this discussion first, then quiz. Discussion, quiz within a day, or in Chinese that's the same. But for grade 5 up, we have it one step forward. We have reading first before test. Read, then test. So that's
And then
a,
discussion.
and then discussion. And then discussion. That's, I think, is more effective than listening to the lecture without knowing what is in store for you. And then, but of course, for the grade 4 down, it's not ready for a pre-discussion test. So we cannot avoid it. But starting from grade 5, in fact, from grade 4, second semester, we started it. So for reading subject, not for not for those skill subject, of course. For math, we don't follow that. Still, the facilitators have to lecture. Then, but right away, maybe next day, there's a quiz on that for the higher grade levels. So application of the law of forgetting. There's some scientific, like in our school, like test. Why is it that we give test? Why is it that frequently, regularly? And why is it that we give announced tests, never give unannounced tests? Because for us, unannounced tests will create unnecessary pressure on the part of the children. And it is tantamount to giving long tests every day because there's no coverage. It's unannounced and no coverage. The teacher can just give whatever items taken from the past weeks in the test. So, although, of course, theoretically, you don't need to prepare, but actually, you have to prepare every day. You still have to, the children have to prepare every day. That the only problem there is that you prepare the next day, there's no test. Parang it's so frustrating, you know. You prepare something for the next day and there's no test. And another thing, what do you have to prepare? You prepare everything. You don't, the so broad is the scope that pressure accumulates, and so frustrating is that the next day this you have test in this subject, there's no test in this subject, and those who are a bit weak, personality a bit weak, they will give up, they won't study anymore anyway, there's no test, and all of a sudden there's a test the next day. So parang it's, the life is so uncertain, too uncertain for that. The children are not ready for that. Life is uncertain, true, but there should be certainty in education, in the learning process. There should be some kind of certainty to lessen the pressure, and eventually um, eliminate pressure from the scene. Instead, motivation will come in. So, if the content is right, if the test is properly designed, and third, if the kids does not have gaps, motivation is easy. It's part of his life. Facilitators classroom learning process will be full of motivation. Pressure is no longer has no room in this kind of learning system. So that's why we have to
Mm,
avoid us start from preschool, grade 1. We have to avoid um, learning gaps. Let's reduce it to the minimum. Yes, 2 days ago I just attended a dep ed sort of a dep ed gathering. I think the regional director mentioned about two. He said dep ed department now is focusing on two aspects of learning. I, I was I was I was a bit curious. What's that? Something new. Said we have to focus on literacy and numeracy. Is that new? That should not be new. That should be the numeracy and literacy. It's new. So anyway, um, well, of course, the official did not say it's new, but focus on this. I think it should be. It just should have been the focus, no. So, but I'm happy that DepEd does not mention any more of no assignments. Before they mention you should not give assignments, you should not give uh, graded format grade. You should not grade formative test. They have formative, summative test. Formative is equivalent to our practices. We don't give grades.
mm,
But summative
right.
is quizzes. But our summative is every day. Their summative is once a month, probably once every 2 weeks. No? Okay, so that's the difference. No? Our summative is regular. Formative is the one that we have in the classroom, sit work practices. They're not graded, of course. So um, that's it, no? So why is it that we have to develop in the children all these traits, no, hard work, everything, so that to avoid learning gap? On the part of the facilitators, the school has to be very careful in setting a policy on content, the content of the quiz, and then the test. How do we give test? I think these are the three major aspects in the learning process that would determine whether there will be pressure or there will be motivation in the learning process. Our goal is that pressure not should not have a room in this learning process. It should be motivation. No, and
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
We're running out of time, so I'll maybe just last two. I have many more to ask, but I'll reduce it to like two more questions, just to end it. The first one: How would you translate, like you said, the way we created this system in the school is to prepare them for. Oh, actually, no. You said that this is not preparation for life. This is life itself.
next step, yes,
But in a way, we are preparing them for a certain a different kind of life outside of school. And the different kind of life outside of school is more unpredictable, right? Is it? Are we by making things so controlled within the school? Are we training them for a controlled life? Because when you're forced to study because there's going to be a quiz tomorrow, you create this habit of, okay, I have to always be prepared. And that's true in life. When you have meetings, when you have presentations at work, you always have to be prepared, right? Somehow. But on the regular days when there is no deadline in front of you, I think it's still important that we improve our lives by studying, by learning, by reading. But then if there's no deadline, like in school, there is a deadline, there is a test tomorrow. So there is a habit formation by way of the system. But in life outside of school, how does that translate?
yeah. Probably if you see it from the point of view of form, as if everything is so rigid, everything is so certain. Tomorrow there's a test. But if you see starting from grade 4, second semester, we have the pre-discussion test. Pre-discussion test. The content, there's now the element of uncertainty. The facilitator did not discuss anything, just give you pages. Yeah, you have to read
Mm,
this. And at most, they they give the children guide questions. But guide questions is not a guarantee that if you answer all the guide questions, you get perfect score or pass the test. There are some aspects in the test in the next day which are not in the guide questions now. Okay, so that in content, from the point of view of content, there is quite a lot of uncertainty. In fact, unknown, because you just don't know what the facilitator will emphasize. Probably guide questions somehow would lead, would give a hint to the learners what the facilitators think is important. Probably, but it's not 100% will come out from the guide questions. No, there are lots of items that are not in the guide questions. So from the point of view of form, it's certain. From the point of
mm,
view of, from the side of the content, there's quite lots of uncertainty, even unknown. So we're preparing them for unknown. Yeah, actually, if they're good in academics, they have the will, strong, they're disciplined, everything. When they go to college, whatever course they will take, accountancy or what, or engineering or other courses, law, medicine, they are ready. They are ready, and by that time, as they mature, and they can with equipped with those knowledge, solid foundation, they're not afraid of uncertainty. And in fact, we are preparing them to face uncertainty in after college, in their profession, in their chosen profession.
right. Uh, what what advice then would you give to parents or even the learners, their children? Uh, like what advice would you give them in facing difficulties, not only in school but in real life, but maybe for our conversation in the context of a school, since they're
Yeah.
learners, what advice would you give them, to them or to their parents?
Yeah, I think the best advice is that first they trust the policy of the school. They follow. I told many times. I think in your time I mentioned that be obedient. I told the learners, the easiers, I don't ask anything from you. I just ask one thing from you: obey. Sometimes even blindly. If you don't know the reason why your facilitators tell you to do this, just obey. Uh, and eventually, probably in the weeks from now, a month, you will understand it. But if you don't obey, and next a month later you understand it, but you miss the opportunity, then it's too late. So be obedient. Second, for the parents especially, look at tests from a different perspective. Don't look at tests as some kind of a scary thing that will that is some kind of a threat. Uh, because if you fail the test, you'll be retained in the same grade level, or you have to take summer class. You cannot go to vacation. Join the family vacation. You have to look at from the point of view positively. Why? First, from you have to understand that the facilitators need feedback. Feedback so valuable that they know what next step they would do based on the quiz result. Second, well, give your children moments of excitement, excitement in knowing what the result of the effort through the scores, through their grades. And for the parents, test, as I said, to quote William Bennett, is a friend of good education. Why? Because through tests, children becomes more responsible. They know that's their job. Their job is only to study. These children, no, and then every day they have work to do. When they become doctors, lawyers, every day they have work to do. No, so now since life education is life, then they have to do what is their main job is to prepare for the next day's activity, and part of it probably is taking the test. Okay, um, and eventually develop all those good the values, the core values that the school wants to instill in every learner.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. There are a lot more. I have a lot more to ask and a lot more topics to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about those in the next episodes. Do you have anything more to
Okay.
add? We're good.
Oh, I think I have said everything with
Okay.
regards
Okay.
to pressure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and
Yeah. Let's end
motivation.
here. This is good. Okay.